Back in the late 60s, there existed a religious sect known as the Process Church of the Final Judgment. The core beliefs were that at the end of the world, Christ and Satan would come together, reconcile, and begin to judge and execute the population. So, they worshiped both of them. While this information set people on edge, it did not deter people from becoming members of the process, and the church flourished throughout the 60s and 70s. In that period, an increase was seen in missing children across the United Kingdom, the Mexican Yucatan Peninsula, and even in the state of New Orleans. Kids ranging from as young as 3 to as old as 10 were being taken on walks home in their front yards, and even sometimes from their homes in the dead of night. Bodies were rarely recovered. When they were, well, let's just say it was quickly established that it would have been better for the families to simply hold out hope for a safe return. What was done to these children was simply horrifying. Every unspeakable act you could possibly think of in order to inflict pain was carried out. All children left completely blind, with a look of indescribable pain and terror on their faces, if any were discovered by the authorities, or, God forbid, passers-by. Due to the satanic panic raging throughout the United States and United Kingdom at the time, most information regarding satanic cults or missing persons cases were kept under lock and key, so as not to cause mass hysteria. One particular incident caused so much havoc it was feared that if brought to the public light, it would shock the nation to its core. On October 12, 1975, a photograph was posted by the local authorities in 15 states in the USA and 5 countries in the UK, all receiving the same image, the one you see accompanying the story. On October 13th, a normal middle-class family in Essex was settling down for the night, when the father heard his son screaming from his room. As he darted upstairs, he found a man in a white lab coat, goggles, and a modified gas mask towering over his frightened 7-year-old son. The father reacted quickly and subdued the man before calling the authorities. When he was brought in, he was identified as Reverend Michael Turnwell. Though he had no records of ever living in the area, in fact, the residence he was registered at was 300 miles away. What he was doing out there? In his pockets, they found a bottle of chloroform, a rag, a switchblade knife, and a small pocketbook, filled from cover to cover with incomprehensible gibberish, mixed in with citations from the satanic verses, diegetics, and the Old Testament. When asked what the hell he was doing with all these items and his purpose for that young boy, he simply smiled wide-eyed and said, "I'm doing God's work. They need to see the light." Under further interrogation, it was revealed he was a member of the Church of the Process. He agreed to show the police where the children were being taken in exchange for protection, assuring them all that while the children are fine, they're with God now. They saw the light. Not fully understanding this vague reference, they persisted and got him to open up. This is what he told them. "We knew that the children could be spared judgment, for they do not understand sin. They are pure. But in order to be accepted into God's loving arms, they first needed to see the light. So he subjected it to them with the God machine. Those that became blind or removed their goggles were punished accordingly. Those that were not blinded were accepted into God's flock, their souls escaping their bodies, and their shells to be used as we saw fit. They were no longer harboring any children." He trailed off, giggling like a child. "Those were our toys to play with, and believe me, officers, we did enjoy our toys. Even if they broke sometimes. Love the sin, hate the sinner." He burst out laughing, the room seemingly shaking around him. After a few moments, they asked him what happened to the children that turned around, as well as the children positioned in this image were facing outwards. The Reverend gave a sick, twisted smile and said slowly, and in a naturally deep voice, "They are the ones who become part of His Legion. Who do you think carries on work once some of us get caught or perish? "We are everywhere, detective. We will bring all children to the light. You simply need to look west, and you will know the face of evil." He suddenly leaned forward to intently stare at the detective opposite him and asked sadistically, "Tell me, do you have children?" He was found dead in his cell the following morning, having concealed a cyanide cap in one of his teeth. Some weeks following, one of the officers involved in the case lost their child, a little boy. He simply vanished one day walking home from school. His body was never recovered. Serial killers Fred and Rose West were caught 19 years later on the 24th of February 1994, after a 20-year spree in which they raped and killed more than 13 people, including their own children. When Fred was interrogated, he mentioned that 20 children were captured and killed by himself. Rose and the others did not know of in a bar not too far from where they lived. When asked how he managed to capture all of them so easily, he simply smiled and said, "It's easy when you live directly next to a church."